Most people pray for rain, but in the town of Amechi, they learned to fear it. They thought their songs were reaching heaven, but they didn't realize something else was listening and it was hungry. This is the story of the Living Spring Chapel. Once upon a time, in Amechi, a quiet hillside town where mornings were ruled by church bells and evenings by crickets, there stood a church everyone knew. It was called Living Spring Chapel. The church had white walls, blue roofs, and wooden pews that creaked softly when people sat. Nothing about it looked strange, but something about the choir was never ordinary. At the center of it all was a woman called Sister Ifunanya. She had led the choir for years, not because she was the loudest and not because she had the strongest voice, but because when she lifted her hand, people listened. She was always calm, always composed. Her voice was smooth, controlled, and almost gentle. And whenever Sister Ifunanya stood before the choir and opened her mouth to sing, the sky responded. The first Sunday it happened, nobody noticed. It was the harmattan season. The air was dry and dusty. The sun burned early. People arrived at Living Spring Chapel already wiping sweat from their faces. Service went on as usual. Opening prayers, Bible readings, announcements. Then, the choir stood. Sister Ifunanya lifted her hand. The song was familiar, old and comforting. Halfway through the first verse, the heat inside the church softened. A breeze slipped through the open windows. Someone smiled. "Thank God," they whispered. By the time the song reached the chorus, clouds had gathered quietly above Amechi, and before the final note faded, rain fell. It wasn't a storm, just a steady, cooling rain. People laughed as they stepped outside. "God has remembered us," an old man said. Rain was a blessing, so nobody questioned it. But the following Sunday, the sun rose sharp and angry again. Not a single cloud in sight. Women left home without umbrellas. Children complained about the heat. The choir stood. Sister Ifunanya raised her hand. They sang. Before the second verse ended, the wind returned. This time, it was stronger. People glanced at the windows as the clouds gathered faster than before. Rain followed. Somebody laughed nervously. Again? Coincidence is one thing, but coincidence becomes uncomfortable when it repeats itself perfectly. By the third Sunday, the fourth, the fifth, it no longer mattered how bright the morning was. Whenever the Living Spring Choir sang, the clouds gathered and the rain fell. Every single time. Traders in the market began to joke. If the choir is singing today, bring an umbrella. But the joke slowly turned into warnings. Inside the church, people no longer smiled when the rain began. They listened instead. Other choirs sang. Nothing happened. Guest ministers came. The sky stayed dry. It was only that choir. Only Sister Ifunanya. And the strangest thing, the choir never looked surprised. They sang calmly, eyes closed, voices steady, like people fulfilling an agreement. Soon, the rain grew heavier. Services were interrupted. Roads flooded. One Sunday, a wedding was scheduled. The bride arrived glowing. The guests were many, but as soon as the choir sang, the rain came down violently. The wind scattered chairs. The wedding was postponed. Another Sunday, a burial followed the service. The rain flooded the cemetery. The coffin had to wait. That was when fear gripped Amechi. Attendance dropped. People stayed home or watched online. But still, the choir sang. And then, the fading began. After every heavy rain, one choir member would grow weak. It wasn't a dramatic sickness, just tiredness, a strange cough, a sudden loss of weight. Then, within weeks, that choir member would disappear. There was no announcement, no farewell. They were simply replaced, quietly, by new members with fresh voices and bright eyes. The choir never reduced in number, but inside the choir room, a heavy silence grew. One evening after rehearsal, a young girl named Munachi stayed behind. She had joined only 2 months earlier. "Ma," she asked softly, "why does it rain every time we sing?" The room froze. Sister Ifunanya looked at her calmly. "Do you want to stop singing?" Munachi shook her head quickly. "No, ma." "Then don't ask questions that weaken grace," Sister Ifunanya replied. Her voice was gentle, but the words were final. Munachi did not return the following Sunday, and Sister Ifunanya, her voice never weakened. While others faded, she stood firm, guiding the songs and counting the voices. Then came one Sunday. The sky refused to wait. The morning was dull. Clouds sat low over the town. As soon as the choir sang, thunder rolled like a drum of war. Rain poured like punishment. The service ended in chaos, but the rain didn't stop. It rained all day, all night, the next day, and the next. The river overflowed. The town began to drown. On the 4th morning, the rain finally stopped, and news spread quietly. Sister Ifunanya was dead. She wasn't ill. There was no report of accident. She was found alone on her bed, dry and cold, while the storm had raged everywhere else. After her burial, the elders searched her room. Under her bed, wrapped in a dark cloth, they found an old hymn book. It wasn't church issued. Its pages were brown, and the songs were written in symbols no one recognized. At the back of the book, one sentence was written clearly: "When voices rise, something must fall." That was when everything made sense. The rain was not a blessing. It was a response. The songs were not prayers. They were payment. Every time Sister Ifunanya and her choir sang, something answered. And every time it answered, it collected a voice and a life. The choir wasn't growing. It was feeding. And when there was nothing left to give, the storm stayed until it took the one who led it. The hymn book was buried and the choir disbanded. The town of Amechi is quiet now. The Living Spring Chapel still stands, but its blue roof has faded under the sun, and the choir loft remains empty. They say that on dusty harmattan mornings, if you listen closely to the wind, you can still hear the faint echo of a smooth, gentle voice, followed by the smell of rain. But in that town, nobody sings anymore. They've learned that some blessings are too expensive to afford, and some songs are better left unsung. If this story gave you chills, let me know in the comments. Have you ever heard of a gift that came with a hidden prize? Or maybe a local legend from your own village that sounds too strange to be true? I'd love to read your stories. If you enjoy this journey to Amechi, don't forget to like this video to help the story reach more people, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next tale, and share this with someone who thinks every rain is a blessing. I am African True Life Tales by Ada, and I will see you in the next story. Until then, watch what you pray for.